Thank you, Martin. We'll move over to the questions in a moment. I just wanted to comment on some of the things that you'd said. So for me, that point you made about do we really know what's going on is a really key question. One of the chairs, I work for two CCGs, and the chair of one of the CCGs I work with talks a lot about how would we know that there's something coming. So when I get the inevitable thing that I get when the hospital is full up and it's busy of can you please go out to general practice and say, can they do everything they can to keep the patients at home because we've got a huge number of people coming with respiratory illness, and the practices say, yes, of course we know that, they've been here for 3 weeks. How would we get ahead of that and know that before that so that we can start to plan and, as you said, Helen, start to use some of that data to plan our workforce to make sure we've got the rotas in place. If they do all hit the hospital in 3 weeks' time, at least we've got the staff there to deal with them. So.
Just to answer that question, we did a big piece of work, a big piece of actuarial analysis for 1 million people in part of England. But what I asked the team to do when they were doing that was just tell me, what's the workforce, the clinical workforce in the hospital? What's the clinical workforce in community and mental health services? And what's the clinical workforce in general practice? So for 1,500 hospital beds, there were 4,800 doctors, nurses, and allied health professionals. In community and mental health services for 1 million people, there were 2,000 doctors, nurses, allied health professionals. For 1 million people, in general practice, there were 696 clinicians. And by the way, they have to look after 6,000 care and nursing home beds, 4 times the number of hospital beds. So when you actually get this data and look at it on a system-wide basis, you start to see how important it is we don't ask what more can general practice do for the NHS, we ask what more can the rest of the NHS do for general practice. So what are the respiratory physicians doing to support general practice? What are the community and mental health services doing to support general practice? Because it's like a heatsink in a computer. Most people think general practice does nothing. Wait until you take it out and then find out what happens as other healthcare systems, like the really difficult one, the States, for instance, keeps trying to up the level. So proactive modelling, if you can start to see where the patterns, you can start to see the patterns of problems, you can then deploy proactive care to respond to those problems. But it's not what more can general practice or. So PCNs are, I think, are really critically important as a solution to moving the agenda away from hospitals, the focus on hospitals, to population health management.
So we've got a few questions on Slido to ask. I think just looking at the times that they come in, a couple of them are for you, Martin. The first one is, could your constructive positivism survive any election outcome? And I think there's one that's related to that, which is probably, are there plans to roll out the population health management programme wider than North East Essex? So if you don't mind me asking you that.
Yeah, so it survived several elections and quite a long time. I don't think it's me. I think it's actually that this is something which, now it may take longer or it may change slightly, but this is a direction of travel that health and care systems worldwide are taking. It's not just about the NHS. So whether we do it 5 years later than might have been. The other thing is, you asked about the rolling it out. The secret sauce in the work we're doing is we work with initially with about 4 or 5 PCNs in an ICS area. And people say, well, why don't you do all the PCNs? Because it's not about the PCNs. The secret to this is we're trying to teach the rest of the system how it needs to operate to support PCNs to be truly effective. And by going an inch wide and a mile deep with 4 PCNs, we can then show the system what it needs to be doing properly. That will then enable the rest of the PCNs to start operating properly, because the infrastructure, the intelligence will be in place and the insight will be in place to support them. Because at heart, most of the people out in the front line, the GPs, the district nurses, the allied health professionals, know what the right thing to do is. They need a system which helps them to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I can't speak for West Essex, but certainly in Mid and South East Essex, it's a piece of programme of work that we've got, and we've got a number of colleagues in the room today who are involved in that. So definitely not just North East Essex. So I think we've got time for the two other questions to answer. So I think you've probably got one each, or you might want to chip in on each other's. So Helen, can you give some examples of how automation could be used in wider business processes outside of payroll and HR for, say, reducing clinical paperwork and workload, for example? Might be a little bit out your area of expertise, but if you've got any insights, it'd be good to hear it.
Yeah, there might be a little bit outside of my remit. Automation happens everywhere. So we're doing a lot with e-signature software. We're doing things with Google Forms and stuff like that online. Very much what we do now isn't just HR and people process related. It can be across the board. But it's just around looking and understanding what technology is out there and not being scared of it and researching a lot of the time. Like I said, RPA can sit across any kind of platform, so you can automate a lot of processes that way. But use experts like us that know what is possible to actually make some suggestions. And obviously some of the millennials that are coming in, they're probably using it in their private lives. So use your workbase.
Thank you. I mean, just to guess that, so we've heard from the hospital group in Mid and South East Essex today, but I know the hospital in Suffolk and North East Essex are looking at how they use automation for a whole load of things, and the guy leading that's got a blog, so if you're interested in how you could use it for other stuff, he's putting that up there on the internet for everyone to see. And I think we've got one final question, which is for you, Jason.
Yeah, I can see that there. So that's around about the workforce feeling rather isolated in terms of and how digital supervision can actually help. I think there's two things. First of all, there's some results from the pilot and how it was actually used. So I'll come to that last. But I think the first thing is it's complement, not replace. The digital supervision platform gives an opportunity to actually do more supervision when and where the workforce wants to undertake it. It's going to get busier, there's no doubt around that, and having an ability to fit in and being able to grab your supervisor in a much more flexible manner, we hope will actually reduce the isolation that people are actually feeling within the workforce. Within the pilot, it was really good to see that there was multiple chances to actually have further reflection. So we had one of our pilot sites was Blackburn, and they have 3 super surgeries and large nursing workforces in each. But their geography means that they are very much far apart. During their testing of the system, it was really good to see 15 nurses on one particular session. They were very small, I have to say, on the videos. But the important thing is that they were all had something to give and all had something to share. So I think the key thing was really that that's an opportunity that they've never had before. So I think that's, again, reducing the isolation that people are feeling.
Lovely. So thank you. Does anyone on the floor have any final questions? I think we've got time for one more, or if not, we'll say thank you to our speakers in the usual way, and I'll let you go back to your seats. Thank you very much.